And what I'll start off with is, how the word conspiracy itself has been, ridiculed and put along those lines regarding what they call conspiracy nuts, conspiracy theorists, that when it's called conspiracy, it's just basically bullshit, crazy stuff. But what you got to realise, if you look at the actual definition of conspiracy and what it really means, and this is in the dictionary, and the same as all the other definitions, that conspiracy, near enough basically put, it's a conspiracy because you've been told something which doesn't make sense, and therefore there's a conspiracy, which means it doesn't make sense, and you're using that critical thinking, you're asking questions to make it a conspiracy. So when they say 9/11 conspiracy and all those things, it's basically saying a conspiracy, asking why the official story doesn't make sense, compared to what they call conspiracy videos, and then I'm going to move into this thing regarding Edward Snowden, and how he's being portrayed as a traitor and stuff like that. Right, we'll start with that. Basically on this, right, referring to what we say, right, to basically put it, this dude, how he's being portrayed as a traitor for start as well. You've got to ask yourself, right, this dude, basically he was living what you would call a dream, right? A dream life for a lot of people. This dude had a mansion and, who knows, something like a villa, something like in Hawaii, the dude, was on a proper paid job working for the NSA and that. And he sacrificed all that, to obviously go rogue in that, to expose these people who are actually illegally spying on American citizens for starters, right? And also abroad as well, like GCHQ, which were part of this thing that they're involved with in a lot of countries in the world. And this dude sacrificed, as I said, which would be my biggest sacrifice is lady as well. And you've got to ask yourself, right, why would this dude do that, right, to take refuge in Russia, right, and give up where he wanted to live, Hawaii, of all this stuff he had? Why would he do that for starters? That's a critical question if he's supposedly a traitor. And, referring back to just trying to recap what I said. But, there's a lot of things behind that. And as I said, this is the same thing I mentioned in the last recording. Where the deception for soldiers who are, told where they're going to wars and that because they're serving their country. And then they find out they were lied to and all that stuff. Well, we could use the same deception which was used across to Edward Snowden. I should have assumed when he joined that agency, right? That dude obviously was younger. And this dude obviously was lied to and that. He was told you're serving for your country, blah, blah, blah. You're protecting the civilians of your country, you're serving for us for goodwill, from attacks and threats. And, this dude obviously found out, like Bradley Manning did and that. People like that, but like even soldiers who have found out. And basically putting across that, this dude, see, that's the way I'm seeing what this dude did. And it makes more sense than what the papers are portraying him to be, which I'll move on to in a minute. But, as I said, this dude, as seen, just analysing that, this dude, he went abroad and did it for a reason. Ask yourself in the first place, why did this dude go and leak this information? What's being portrayed as by biased government-owned papers is that he did it, because he was a traitor. Traitor how? Exposing illegal activity they're doing. How is he a traitor for that, for starters? So, that just sounds like bullshit anyway. But you know what I mean? When you have to go, you have to leave your, living the life in a place like Hawaii and all this stuff he had. And, go to to a country that you don't even, you have to just basically sacrifice everything and go on the run and try to hope to get refuge. This is another thing. This dude didn't even know if he was going to get, he didn't know if he was going to get extradited back to the USA for starters and get what Bradley Manning did, trial imprisonment without trial. So you gotta ask yourself, why did that in the first place? And the way I see it, as I said, this dude was lied to. They said, you're serving for the country, you'll do this, you'll be helping the people. And obviously this dude found out as he was working for him as an agent, that basically, he found out what they were doing, illegal activity, spying on US citizens themselves and in other countries. Reading, that reading people's emails, everything like that. Lots and lots of stuff, if you look into that. And basically this dude, he fled the country and did what he had to do, like I said in the last recording, to actually do what he saw, what he thought it was, to help the people of America, not mainly America, but the rest of the world as well. To say, look, this is why I'm doing it, because I was lied to by these people. He said I was working for my country. But I've found out, that, I'm actually betraying the people by keeping these secrets. So what I've done, is I've gone to Hong Kong, and that's where this dude leaked it. So yeah, actually that dude, if you look at that side, the other side of the coin, it shows to me, and this is from analysis, and the way I see it, that this dude actually did it, and it makes more sense. You've got to ask yourself, clearly think first, instead of, again, being gullible to what the media portrays as. Why did this dude do this? Sacrifice everything. So that tells me a lot already about that, and then, as I said, so you can make your decision from that. Because, it doesn't make any other sense to me, especially when they're trying to betray this dude. As I said, it doesn't make sense to me. It says that he actually did it for goodwill. There's nothing that says, there's a traitor at all. It just doesn't make sense. Especially, as I said, the irony of the people trying to convict him for doing apparently illegal stuff are the people who were doing illegal stuff in the first place, Because, as I said, basically this was a big secret, and I'll recap on this, that, as I said, if anybody had the suspicion, it was on the outside, and confronted them and said, we think you're illegally spying on American citizens in the first place, they would have denied it. And therefore, if he didn't leak that information, which is a lot of information, nobody would have known about that. For starters, let's just say that, So, It's ironic that these people are saying that is, because it makes more sense to me for starters, right? And anyway, we'll move on to the newspaper, to buy us a newspaper, right? And basically with that, as I said, using analysis and comparison from two articles, like the, which actually, I uploaded on my Facebook page, like the Daily Mail, which I believe is like corporate-owned media paper, and then the Guardian, which we refer back to, which was the first paper this dude leaked the information to, and actually, exposed it. They didn't hide it. And, when I looked at the comparison of both papers, basically what I saw in the Daily Mail, which was boldly put on the first word on the article, was traitor in capital letters. And, along that, traitor was used a few times just on the front article, like they were trying to dig that into the mind of people. And as I said, this is another thing, that it was a biased view. It had opinion based on it. As the way I've analysed newspapers and journalists, they don't use opinion at all. Bias, basically opinion. They just report how they should do. Report, a story without their own opinion. Like newspapers, well, you know what I mean. And when I use the analysis of comparison compared to the Guardian, as I said, when I saw that, I wasn't seeing any opinion on it. Just this, the story behind it. Without opinion. And as I said again, the Daily Mail, which is apparently, well, it looks like blatantly it's corporate owned. And then you look at, like the Guardian, as I said, which is the only paper and the first paper that leaked this information. First to the UK, where it's based, and then the rest of the world. as I said, and then, we'll stay on this basis of newspapers. Again, from analysis of the actual, the Guardian news, the Daily Mail, which I saw, and then, and then I looked at their website and their online article, and basically the front page article was a bit twisted round. It was portrayed differently to what I saw online, which is a bit more thorough about everything. And this is based on, business terms, and everyone knows this, that newspapers are more popular than online articles, right, for starters. So therefore, the more people, again, the same as the TV brainwashing machine, they use the newspaper to brainwash the public with that, compared to online articles and stuff like that. So, you got to follow from that. Obviously, they're going to put in the more biased, twisted round, not so thorough, article in the mainstream news compared to online, where it's less popular, less people are going to read it. We'll just keep it as brief as that. And as I said, compared to the Guardian, which actually were already thorough about it. So there's a lot of things behind that. And, when I referred back to the last recording, blacklisting and that, which exists. And, and those things, basically, we'll briefly put without, going too deep into it. That basically has been found out, and you can research this. Like a ex-Secret Service like that. They can be blacklisted. And, even if they've not apparently leaked information, they can be. Because they can be a liability, because they carry information like a computer does, it carries memory, and they basically can be hacked but biologically, and there's basically chemicals that can be used for like hacking someone, making them leak information. It's an interrogation chemical, and I've seen this, even if it's a game, they exist. You could probably find that out as well if you look it up. And, basically it does something to the chemicals in the brain. And, it makes you leak secrets that, you don't want people to know. Just an interrogation chemical. As I said, there's a Splinter Cell game before a Blacklist, I think. And basically there's, on that, just the scene where he's in that aircraft carrier, and, you'll see it if you remember the game. And, he goes to inject him with his stuff. So, yeah, and those people can be a liability just for that. So if they've done anything too, too high level, sometimes they get taken up for that, just in case they ever get caught. It's a lot of things. So, that's what you got to realise on that basis for starters. There's a lot more to these things that And, as I said, based on what I said on the last recording about media portrayal about the police, and it's just the same as people like Secret Service. There's a program on BBC, what I used to watch, was called Spooks. And as I said, they're the same portrayal was put across, which I was led to believe, the psychological deception again, the portrayal, the perception put across that they were fighting evil and good, the good guys. But when you look at things like Edward Snowden and what I just said, it shows another side to those things, and it just down to research. Google holds a lot of information, leaked information. So there's a lot behind that itself, there's a lot behind it, and it's just like research. And as I said, as I've said before, and then, like Edward Snowden and that. Where it comes to how he's being ridiculed as well. What they've done is destroyed his image and that. By using his, if they could, his past or anything, friends and anything, any secrets, they know what they do to destroy his reputation. I don't know if they've done this or they've tried, but he's basically said himself, which he stated, when people go against them, they have to try and find a way to incriminate the person who exposed them. and they'll use things from their past, anything from their past to make them look bad. And I don't know if they did with Edward Snowden, but from him saying it, maybe he's saying they attempted to. But they can upload things to they could upload things to his computer, like stuff he hadn't put on there to incriminate him. And, this is critical thinking again. If he was actually a criminal and they did try to do this, why were they trying to put incriminate him with, made up incriminating evidence to try and make him look like a criminal? Because to me that says that he's innocent, and they're trying to make him look like one because they know he's innocent, trying to destroy his reputation. And they can do a lot of these things, as I discovered from that video I posted. I don't know what this is to do with. I don't know if it's because since the conspiracy stuff I've been posting and that, but I've discovered that the network on my laptop is, which I posted in that video, it's which I didn't even give legal permission or even acknowledge or even know. I came by this as across as accident, but that my housing association, it's called Home Group in the UK. They have their own website. It's they've actually accessed my network on my computer illegally, basically, for starters, right? And they're and they've even put a password on it, which I can't even change. When I go and click to change this password, it doesn't even let me click on it, like it's deactivated, right? And as I said, all the other options work. And when I try to leave this network, it doesn't let me, doesn't even let me exit it, It doesn't even let me leave this network. And then ironically, before discovering this thing, when I went onto the control panel and where I found this networks thing, contradictorily, it's lying to me, basically saying that I'm not even connected to this network. But when I go into control panel, it's saying otherwise. It's saying it's connected on what I just mentioned. So, that's a bit fishy for starters. But, I don't know the whole situation behind this site. But, that's all I was saying. That there's a lot of things, As I said, I don't know if something to do with me because of what I've been sharing and that, I didn't think many people listen to my videos and stuff anyway, conspiracy and this, unless there's something I don't know. So, when it comes to things like that, yeah, so, there's a lot of things behind things like this. And as I said, you just have to do your own research, and when you find out these things, you see further and further and further. And then that's all you have to put, regarding Edward Snowden, and look at his side and ask yourself from what I've said and regarding that, what you see it as, because I see it as a different side to how it's being portrayed as, through media biased and that. As I've said before, there are, articles in it with things like this about people who have ended up being what they call blacklisted. If you look it up, there's probably quite a few that have been leaked. So, never, if you don't do your research, you never find out for starters. And then we'll move on to, what we should move on. Just trying to think what we can move on to now, man. I'm just trying to keep on the, same, on the level of what I'm talking about. But yeah, there's a lot of things that people don't realise behind things like this. And so, yeah, and, this dude, Edward Snowden, all I can tell you now, and this is always non-biased, always non-biased. I never, I never take sides, always look at both sides. But from what I've discovered, and just from analysing what I know, there's a different side to this story, which people don't know of, and that's why I've explained that. So yeah, you just got to think about things like that, instead of listening to one side. And the more you look into it, you'll find out. And then we'll move on to religious things now. So now that's out of the way. And basically, all I will say again as well, this before we move on to that, the Spooks thing, that Spooks program, which actually showed that sort of thing, lifestyle that these people live, who work for them, basically what they did on there, which shows what you got to do. Which is why if those people go missing, so if Edward Snowden did get caught and he didn't escape and leak that information, basically because his girlfriend, family, anyone wouldn't have known what he did in the first place, because it was the same as this program. They have to keep it a secret from everyone because of the job they've got and what it's all regarding. So those people that get blacklisted, they can easily, if the information isn't leaked or found out, it can be a cover up, and people can say, the people behind it, they can basically say, look, whatever happened to him, man, he died of a suicide or anything. And there's a lot of things that people don't realise. What we move on to actually first now, the secrets of human society, like we'll talk about Nikola Tesla first. And basically this do researching him. This dude, as I said, he basically created free electricity for the world, right, for starters. And that, first of all, that ain't right, when you think about it, it's like questionable, because I was thinking when I first saw it, that isn't right, from what I've been perceived to see. Basically, this dude put in light bulbs into the earth, right? And he, I don't know how he did it, maybe through the light bulbs, but, he made free electricity using, mud, just the earth and the ground. And, this dude created a lot of other things, and basically, right, all I know is what it's known as, well, he apparently died of a suicide, right? And as I said, if you research this again, all these documents regarding this free electricity for the world, it went missing, and a lot of other things, a lot of, crazy things. And anything what was less major, minor, technologically wise, all that. It basically remained, it was confiscated and then it was put back out in the public, but all those things like free electricity, were, they went missing. There was leaked about this stuff. And we, someone to back that up is Albert Einstein. In an interview, someone asked him what it's like to be a genius. And Albert Einstein said himself, don't ask me, He said, ask Nikola Tesla, because that's the dude. We're just putting on that, yeah. And, as I said, referring to the world being a business, what I said before, where, has seen, power plants and all that stuff, man. They're big money makers, They run, they run electricity in countries. And, obviously, regarding this Illuminati thing and what they're about, obviously, if he could actually, what he was planning to do, provide free electricity to the world, if he had done that, it would have been a big fuck up for them, just as much as JFK and Abraham Lincoln trying to take away the central bank. If it was for them to take that away, obviously, it would have been a big screw up for their money. So basically, I believe that's why it was taken away and hidden. And that's why people pay for electricity and still are, when they could be having free electricity for starters and who knows what else he had invented. And then we'll move on to the pyramids in Egypt, right? And this is another thing about that. And you can do research in this, I think it was a scientist, professor or something. So this dude already knows. And basically, the Egyptians, basically it's shown with decent backup to it that the Egyptians back then in the ancient times actually could, they could, they already knew about how to create electricity and that. Now, they was actually making electricity. In what way, I don't know, but what I saw, it was through, not without, like, generators we've got today. When you hear that and if you research that, you'll be as shocked as I was. The first time I heard, and when I saw it, and I saw, when I saw it, I realised, what the dude was saying. And you'll be shocked, as I said, when you look at today and you like the Victorian times where it was shown that, people were still, using candles and shit like that. And, you find out in the ancient times, thousands of years before them, that the Egyptians were generating electricity. And there's a lot behind the, like the human history dating back further than them. That is a mystery, and that people have been hidden from stuff like that for starters. That's just, that's a small part of it, man. But yeah, lots of things, man. And like this thing as well with NASA, right? If you've seen that, there's what they call an exoplanet, and it looks exactly like the Earth. And this is crazy, but there's a lot of secrets kept by them because of who runs them as well. So when you ask yourself, when you look at the Earth, if you research this, just you research it, it looks like the Earth. If it looks exactly like the Earth, you can't really go into detail about the without the knowledge, information, if it's got the same atmosphere, ozone layer. But when you look at there and it looks exactly like this planet, you never know if there's life on it, because to me that tells me there is, But you know what I mean? Obviously things are kept secret, but yeah, if you look that up, it looks exactly like the Earth, and it's crazy. That's just another thing. Not sure how far away it is, but I know it's being viewed from a very long distance with one of those space telescopes. Referring extraterrestrial life, what I will tell you on this, it depends if you're skeptical or not and stuff. But if you listen to this, you're probably not. But last year, which is a coincidence, I was sitting where I'm sitting right now in my living room, watching this documentary regarding extraterrestrial life and stuff to do with ex-Air Force and dudes like that who were witnesses to seeing UFOs and that. And basically I remember a recap from that where they were saying about how these UFOs moved. They moved nothing like like aircraft on this planet anything can do. Basically they moved rapidly, like light speed, and they can move in crazy different patterns and stuff, really fast speed. As like you get a laser pointer, you start pointing at the wall and start spinning it around real fast. This is what these could do. And basically what I would say, from after seeing that, within minutes, basically outside on my street there was a fire engine. Something was going out there. I went to have a look, right? And I was focusing down what fire engine was doing outside, and then suddenly I looked up, like something that was trying to get my attention. And this is what I saw, exactly describing what those dudes described. It was in the sky, right? It was like, it was moving like a plane, and then suddenly it started making these really crazy ass, really fast, rapid moves in really weird patterns that no aircraft on this planet could do, and which described extraterrestrial UFOs, and this is what I saw with my own eyes, and it was crazy, I won't go too deep into that. But all I would say regarding my situation, whatever it is, it's just weird, regarding all that right after I watched the video and that, about UFOs and all that stuff, what I was saying. Then I go out to my window, look up, and I see it right there, and I saw it with my own eyes, and it was doing that, and it's crazy. It was crazy, man, because, as I said, these extraterrestrial life, right, as it's seen how fast the spaceships can move, these things can travel at light speed of light or whatever, that's insane. So, even if, if they could see what I was doing, it would be easy for them to get to me quick, if they wanted to do that. Because to me, maybe it was saying, that no, I was interested in them, so they come to show me. Because, on analysis of other things like aircraft and that, I've done this before, which I've called the third eye view, the senses thing. It's the same with seeing things in the sky when I've not even been focusing on the sky. I've looked up in the sky before and noticed planes really high up, like I could sense them. And, this is the same thing that happened. I was looking out the window, looking down on the street from my flat, one floor down, up above the ground. And yeah, you know, and then I suddenly looked up in the sky like someone was saying, look up here. And that's what I saw, you know, what I explained. You know, and it's crazy, you know. It still shocks me, you know, but it's crazy. I'll just keep it at that, you know, whether you decide to believe it or not, but yeah. And then I move on to the bit where I always leave last because of religious things and that regarding, you know, like things like the Illuminati and stuff like that. But we'll start with you know, like Jesus, people, you know, Jesus, Lucifer, Christ, Antichrist, and like we'll start with celebrations, you know, like celebrations of the Antichrist, subliminal celebrations. And if you do your research on this, right, you know, like Easter, Halloween and Christmas, you'll find out basically they're all actually, you know, like subliminal celebrations of the Antichrist. Halloween is actually the celebration of Lucifer, which, you know, is what I've mentioned about being the Antichrist. And if you actually look behind the rituals they do, raping and stuff like that to kids, and lots of stuff like that, right? Stuff, real nasty shit. Praising demons and shit like that, you know, really bad stuff. But you know how you were portrayed and how you were betrayed, and how you think how you were taught as a kid, how your kids would be portrayed. You know, that it's just about kids going around dressing up as, you know, like devils, demons and all that stuff and going out for fun. It's just like a fun event. But you know, it's just like a you know what I mean, you don't realise it, but you're giving power to those antichrists and stuff, like the evil forces. And it's the same as Christmas. You know, that's a celebration of Nimrod. If you search Nimrod, N for November, I for Indigo, M for Mango, R for Romeo, I for Indigo, D for Delta, you know, NIMRID. If you look at that, yeah, that's a celebration of an Antichrist again. And you know, no one actually knows the actual birth date of Jesus is another thing, right? So then again, you're giving power to the Antichrist again without realising it. And you know, again with Easter, I can't remember, I think it's Easter or something, another Antichrist thing. You know, all these three celebrations have something in common again, which are referred to money, which is the root of all evil. They're about making money, you know, and religious celebrations should have nothing to do with money. You know, that's not Jesus, especially referring back to, you know, about money and that being the root of all evil and what it does. So as I said, you know, referring to again, we'll talk about the Jesus side, the religious side. And you know, it's just the same when you celebrate those events without realising you're praising the Antichrist and that. It's the same as people going to church on Sunday, that, right? And you know, praising in goodwill for in God's name, and giving him power out of positiveness, peace, love, respect, kindness. You're actually doing it in another way, even if you're not feeling those emotions. You know, you're actually giving power to those evil forces that are like Lucifer, especially Halloween. You know what I mean? When you do that without realising, the same as Christmas and everything. And you know, this is weird, but you know, last Christmas, right, what happened, right? You know, on that day when I realised that it's in a celebration of the Antichrist, I played religious music all day, you know, like to dedicate that day to Jesus, you know, like real music. And the way I see it, you know, and it would have been crazy, well, playing if the world could hear that music, but, you know, it was like cleansing the earth of the evil forces that are being praised with actually the name of Jesus to cleanse the world of the evil which is being celebrated, which is coincidental, right? You know what I mean? And you know, we'll move on. What we'll regarding Jesus versus Lucifer, God versus the devil, whatever you want to call it, Lucifer, the devil, Jesus, God. You know, regarding that, basically, you know, as it's known that God God is more powerful than Lucifer, because Lucifer, Satan, was an angel, as it said in the Bible, right? And Lucifer was banished from heaven to earth. This is how the story goes in the Bible. And you know what led from Lucifer is hate for God, for starters. You know, it started off with with hate for God, for banishing him. Right, this is how it goes. And you know, then it led on to jealousy and greed, selfishness, hate, and fear and everything. And you know, when it comes to people, you know, and what we'll say, you know, if you're a Christian or just a normal person, you know, and you're kind and respectful, and you ain't got hate and all that in you. You actually got, what I would say is God in your soul, right? But those people who show hate, jealousy, selfishness, greed, they're all those things that Lucifer brought down to earth with him, you know, when he was banished, what they call heaven. And basically, but as I said, it's not the sky as people think. It's a white light, like a parallel universe, from experience of people who have NDEs, near-death experiences. You know, and we'll go into that. But yeah, you know, that's a crazy thing for starters, you know. And you know, all those people, you know, those people who carry those traits basically have the devil in them, you know. And you know, one of those things, which is where I said God is more powerful than Lucifer, because God was like a boss and Lucifer was like, you know what I mean, an angel who doesn't have the same power, and therefore he fears God for starters, you know, because he knows he's more powerful. And you know, that's just one of those things. But people carry those traits, you know, of what they do, like lust and that. And we use this as an example, right, of how this works through a religious side, you know, through this God versus devil side. And then we'll refer to, you know, where I'm talking about the Illuminati cult, and what I refer to what they do on Halloween and that. You know, like paedophilia and sacrificing kids, like killing them and that, you know, just for some kind of evil cult where you know what like Lucifer and the devil is all about. It's not surprising. And we'll refer to this thing to do with House of the Parliament and that, you know, where it's been in the news about a lot of MPs being involved with this paedophilia. And even to do with royal family connections like Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, who were both knighted as sirs and who ended up being pedos. You know, regarding that, and then referring to the Illuminati and everything like that, which is a connection already, you know, and all those connections that you don't realise. And that's just another part of it. You know, it says a lot about it, you know, for starters. And you know, like Jimmy Savile and that, regarding this story, I remember that. You know, where it was rumoured, where it was discovered not long after, years later, after he died as well, ironically, that, you know, this dude was, you know, like a necrophiliac. He was having sex with dead bodies, abusing kids and even adult nurses in this hospital in the 60s. And, you know, the people who spoke out against it, it was covered up, you know, until after his death, and it was revealed, and the people who has been found royal family and that, you know, still were being, you know, make it out like they're not. And, you know, Theresa May and that isn't even looking into investigating that when she's supposed to be, for starters. And even the Houses of Parliament as well. So there's a lot of things behind that as well. You know, and as I said, that's just a part of it, man. You know, regarding, again, with the BBC, right, and Jill Dando's death, if you research that, right, you'll see why she died, right? And I mean, they made out that it was this man, if you saw the official story, that assassinated some random psycho who thought he was some kind of whatever. And, you know, the thing is, when you look beyond that, which wasn't covered by the mainstream media again, you'll find out that, you know, that she was actually, again, referring to paedophiles, and that she was going to expose a ring of paedophiles in the BBC themselves, you know, like her bosses and that. And then, weirdly enough, she was killed. You know, that's weird, you know. That isn't right for starters. Regarding, again, to the royal family and Princess Diana, that's another weird and sketchy death. And you can, you know, as I said, do your research, conspiracy between everything, always type conspiracy and behind his deaths. And you'll find out yourself, if you have decent things like Princess Diana. There's on that documentary, there's a French police detective and that who actually worked for them. I think he actually ended up losing his job as well trying to investigate it. But there's a lot of things, and even forensic investigation behind the death to do with behind the car crash, what happened and the connection. Actually, an interview with a friend who actually said herself, behind that she had told her that her life was in danger regarding Prince Charles and the royal family themselves. And then not long after, she died, right? And that's suspicious for starters when you think about it. So, you always look into those things, and when you put the dots together, it makes sense. And you start to see more and more things for that deception, and the more people behind those things. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that people don't realise when deception is used regarding a lot of things. And as I said, regarding, like the Illuminati pyramid, and if you look at that and use a comparison compared to the UK Secret Service, MI, who they are. And, you look at their logo, it's basically another subliminal message and subliminal sign. It's a triangle like the Illuminati pyramid, right? And it's also, if you look at the top, it's got an eye at the top. And you look at the Illuminati pyramid, another subliminal sign, what I mentioned on the $1 bill. It's a triangular shape with the eye of Lucifer. That couldn't get more obvious. But again, a subliminal sign, what they didn't expect anyone to notice. And then you usually connect what I referred to back to. So, when you put the dots together, there's a lot of things behind it, just trying to make sure I've covered everything, before I sign out and stuff. I just always want to cover these things. And then regarding this chemtrail conspiracy theory, or conspiracy about chemtrails, right, which I briefly mentioned on my previous recording, but for some reason the recordings were cut down. But regarding that, basically, right, what I found out, and what I believe initially when I heard these rumours before I started realising, basically when I went and found this website, which I discovered to be a front owned by a government or something, but this site was lying based. There was leaked pictures of this inside of this commercial airliner, like a Boeing, which is supposed to be, it's basically disguised as a commercial airliner. And basically it was leaked pictures, and it had like aerosol canisters and chemical canisters, stuff like that. Properly, it was packed with this odd looking equipment, it didn't have seats in it, it was stripped out and all these things, and even had hazardous poisonous signs on the chemical canisters for starters. But this website as a front, like Snopes.com, and that was saying no, these are lies, and made up false lies about what they really were. And referring back to, if on the last recording, if you actually see these pictures and research about there's supposed to be vapour coming from the jet engines, but you see them come from the wingtips, and they're saying that aerosol deodorants. And basically, these poisons they spray in the air, it's something to do with geoengineering. I don't know if it's weather manipulation, there's a lot behind it, but let's just say these poisons, after they've spread in the air, and basically, they're like metal alloys and particles and stuff. And when they start to, obviously that they're heavy, so they end up de-elevating towards the ground. And when they turn ground level, people are breathing those poisons in, and they actually kill people and give people diseases and all sorts of things, give them illnesses and that. And that isn't right, But, as I said, used again for deception. It's a lie. People are lied to, and they believe what they're told from apparently official stories. But yeah, if you do your research and that, as I said before, if your kids and that are playing around or whatever, if you're a parent and that, you got to think of your kids for starters. They're breathing that stuff in without realising. Because, as I said, referring to how it's deceived and how, like even through pictures that it looks normal, but it's not the normal sky, and you're told it's vapour from the engines. It's vapour from the engines, and you accept it and don't take notice. what you don't realise is, those things go down on ground level, and a lot of people breathe them in all across the world, everywhere where they're sprayed, anywhere they're sprayed. And they're disguised as airliners for starters, commercial airliners, so obviously when they fly out of airports, people are going to see them and not even take notice, but people have noticed, and they've found out that they're not in the first place regarding like this website. It might have been Snopes or another one where it was a government French site, making lies about the truth, like Snopes and that, about energy drink, about the rumour of taurine, which is bull sperm and bull urine. There were this website Snopes, which has been found to be lied about a lot of stuff what ended up being true. Another government French site, a subliminal message on Red Bull, regarding if you think about bull sperm, bull urine, and then you refer to, the actual Red Bull, it's basically a subliminal sign to say a lot. And then we'll carry on, right? So yeah, and then there's this thing about the KFC thing, which again Snopes lied about, where they actually have leaked pictures, the same as the chemtrail paints. And they're mutant chickens genetically modified. They're not real chickens, it's to save money, and and it'll gross you out if you look this up and find it. And they lied about that and said this is a rumour, so another lie. Said it was Photoshop or some stuff. But it's a business thing, the same as McDonald's do. If you research that, like Jamie Oliver and that, where he found they put this sludge stuff in it. It cuts down on how much beef they have to use and pay for, so they can sell more by putting in, it's the same stuff. That's why it's crap stuff in the first place. Your kids eating it for stars. But it's just the thing they do to save money and then poison people. And it's the same as KFC will do with these, what they call genetically modified chickens, mutant chickens. It saves them money because obviously genetically modified. So there's a lot of things behind those things for starters, and the reason why these websites actually end up lying. Have been found out about things what ended up being true for starters, because as I've said before, and I've seen people from analysis when these rumours come up, I've seen before, they always link that Snopes website for starters, and what I discovered from these things, they ended up being true. So yeah, there's a lot of things behind that already. Just trying to think, of anything else I haven't missed out before I finish off. But as you can see, there is a lot behind things, that you really need to, think about. Use your skills, instead of listening and being gullible to what you hear. If it's got good sources to it and reasons to it, as I said on the previous recording, definitely, consider using those things, those skills that have been taken away from you. Basically, with the atheism thing, to make people psychologically be deceived into, it gives less power to the less people that acknowledge God's presence, Jesus' presence, his existence, the more people are led to believe through deception about religion being a joke. At the same time, the people who actually were near enough religion, the Antichrist, who were praising near enough of religion but out of evil, try and put that deception across the minds of people that the actual real God exists, while they secretly praise the Antichrist called Lucifer. And that's what people don't realise on those terms, because it gives less power. And the less power that people give to the power of God about peace and love and positiveness, Jesus and that, the less power that it gives to that religion, to the Christian religion. And then it comes to as I said, a lot of atheist people they celebrate Christmas even though they don't believe in Jesus. For starters, referring back to the Lucifer thing, the Nimrod thing and Antichrist, who at the same time these people were celebrating and giving power to the Antichrist, where they're celebrating that without believing in Christ at the same time. And that's even worse, So when it comes along to that, it makes more sense, because obviously they're giving praise and power to the Antichrist for starters, Nimrod. And based on that, if they were Christian and they actually knew the story behind it, and they actually were praising Jesus and even not celebrating a birth date, which was actually a subliminal deception, that actually praises the Antichrist, Nimrod, they would give more power, referring to church. It's just another way, you don't have to pray, though. I don't even know how these Illuminati cults, praise to Jesus. Well, Jesus, Lucifer, as we pray to Jesus. For starters, right? So, all I know is Christians put their hands together and they pray. So what, on churches on Sundays, as I said, across the world, or even in a nation, when people are going to those churches, their praising groups is giving power to Jesus. But based on this, the way people have been led to believe in, not acknowledging him and having no faith, or believing in him, being atheist, that less people give that praise because there's less Christians than there could be if they realised. And even more, referring to Christmas, which is near enough a worldwide celebration, that more people who are atheists to celebrate, and again referring to the Antichrist more than they could if they realised the truth and they were Christian and knew. So that's where they they don't realise subliminally. That's just one of the part of the things, man. There's a lot of things behind it. A lot of things, more things than you realise. And you've got to realise that, So, that's just another part of it. It's just another another big part of it, A lot of things behind that. And these people doing this, So, you just got to think about that. I think I've covered everything I need to on that anyway. And basically, when it comes to that, for an example, and this is a decent one to use, love versus lust. And when you're tempted into cheating on your partner, right? And as a dude, if you're tempted by a lady, and as I said, she's tempting you to cheat, right? What you'll get that temptation to do it, where you're basically turned on and that, and you're trying to resist it, but your heart, your emotions, your heart, whatever you want to call it, whatever you view, is saying, "No, I love my girl," and that, and I don't want to do this, but your judgments are being clouded by that lust, by the being turned on, basically, right? And this in the, as an example, as people know, where they see like having the God and the devil on one shoulder, each shoulder, and the devil's saying, do it, it'll feel good, and the God's saying, don't do it, you'll pay the consequences, it's not good, think of your girl, basically, right? And that's what it's like, right? When you're put into that situation, we'll put it on this lust thing, the devil, the lust, which is part of the 7 sins of the devil. The lust is the first thing the devil puts into your mind, do it, it'll feel good, bad intentions for the first place. And and then God's on the other side saying, nah, don't do it, you love your lady in there. Think about her, innit? It's like that, where that fight starts. And then, then it comes to the selfishness and greed, where the devil would be saying to you, something like, what she don't know won't hurt, do it, it'll feel good, what she don't know, she don't hurt, right? It'll be something like that, right? And that's the selfishness and greed, one of the other sins of the devil, which is kicking in with the lust. And while you're doing that, and then you'll be tempted, so you give in to that lust and the selfishness which is implanted, and and basically you give in to that, what you do, right? You end up feeling guilty afterwards, right? You relieve yourself from the lust and but afterwards you will feel guilty. I analysed this from my ex, right? She showed signs of that without me realising at the time, but now I realise. she was showing guilt because she knew I was being good to her, and she knew she couldn't, hold back the guilt. And this is what a lot of people seem to do when they do that. And, guilt is one of those others of the 7 sins of the devil that kicks in after, after that happens. And you'll see, that you'll find out, where if you realise now, if you're starting to feel me on this, as I said, the devil has nothing but good intentions, but bad intentions for you. And you end up paying the consequences from that, mainly from the thing that comes from it, guilt. And, it's like the good, bad friend thing. The devil's the bad friend. And all God was saying is think about your lady, and how much you love her. And, he had good intentions for you. Let's just put it that way. And, then there's the bad friend, the devil, who just wanted you to do it so you feel bad about yourself. So, you just have to go along those lines of how that sort of, as an example of how it works. When you've got, the devil in your soul, and you've got the God in it as well, and that's how it works. But that's a good example, and those are all those traits. So, that's just part of it. And, while I'm on that topic, I'm just trying to think of what else to move on to, right? But, that all as I know is what comes from that for starters. And then what we move on to regarding Jesus, like the Antichrist and that, and these are the connections with Romans. The Romans and the Illuminati, what I have from comparison and analysis. Romans who crucified Jesus and that. The Romans were basically conquering the world, trying to take over loads of countries, invading basically wars back then, and they ran on the money system, the same. And when you look at this Illuminati thing, if you're following the conspiracy things I've been on about, they're doing the same thing, and that's what they're planning. And they also run on that enslavement system and the money system. And they're both, the Romans crucified Jesus, so they were Antichrist for starters. And who the Illuminati, they are Antichrist as well for starters as well. So they have a lot of ties in common on that behalf, and this is where it goes along to. And you've got to critically think again, right? If these people, the Illuminati for starters, are a cult that praise this thing called the Antichrist, if they're not even religious, why do they praise something that's the Antichrist? Surely that means they know Jesus exists. Just put it across that, and they know that he exists for starters. So that's just part of it. But yeah, as I said, regarding, that's why they put in those subliminal, basically trickery of celebrations, which are actually, Antichrist celebrations, Halloween, Easter, and Christmas. So you give power to the Antichrist, Lucifer, without realising it, and all those other ones. You know what I mean? And what I'll say is, regarding that, we'll go along the lines as well. Romans as well. If you search that, the months named after, they're actually Roman dates. The calendar months. Like, I think March is named after a god of war. Now, a god of war, 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 what comes from war, evil, and that's wrong in the first place. I believe July is named after Julius Caesar, if I remember right, who is the person who was part of Jesus' crucifixion, if I remember right. And that's another thing, He would be what I would refer to as, Jacob Rothschild Senior is the way I see him, like his, the first version of him. It's the same sort of person. So yeah, there's a lot of things, that ties between those things in the first place. And then we'll move on regarding this Antichrist thing and the subliminal thing which is used, regarding the Jesus Christ cross himself, right? And the Roman cross which he was crucified on, which represents the Romans and what they're about, for starters, right? Roman Catholics. That's another subliminal form of you praising the Antichrist, even wearing a cross, or that cross even without Jesus on it, but even the one with Jesus hanging on it, which is even more disrespectful, because when you see that, right, if you actually study that and think about it, you're actually subliminally praising the Antichrist for starters, because it's the Roman cross you're wearing representing, and then, it's a disrespectful image of Jesus hanging on that cross, dead, and how he was crucified. So you're basically wearing a disrespectful, subliminal, through deception, sign of the Antichrist, And as regarding Exorcist films, if you see them where they show that cross turned upside down, and they make it again through deception and trickery, it turned upside down, they imply that it's disrespectful to Jesus and that, for starters, right? And then when they show it, turned up the up way round, it makes you think that it's respectful, but what you don't realise, it's like a double trickery thing, so you don't even realise that, and so you still keep representing the Antichrist by wearing it, because you've been led to believe that the right way up it's right. And that's just part of it, in this tie with the Antichrist, they want you to praise and represent, especially, again, you think how when they're Antichrist, it means they're so against this dude that they actually, they made this symbol to, again, through deception without you realising. That's just part of it. And, so when you think about that, and this is why I said it should be abolished, the symbol itself, the cross and him, on it, they should just, as they say, as it says, they should make no graven images, as well as the feel. That's basically a graven image in part, that sign itself. Everything's wrong about it. This is what this dude said to me, through spirit. So, that's just part of it. So I put that across, and if you actually think about it, it makes sense when you think about it more, And you're basically giving more power to the Antichrist without realising it, just by wearing those things. So, and then we'll move on to other things, still regarding this stuff. I'm just trying to recap my mind on certain things. Let me just recap. It's just trying to remember. As I said, I'm not reading off my screen this time because for some reason the recordings went missing. But